Another convention, this one at the permanent Atlantic City headquarters of the International Amalgamated Union of Hewers of Wood and Drawers of Water, the powerful IHUHWDW. The sample comprised the President's greeting. If there's one thing that gets my blast all out of this hypocrisy of millionaires and their silver spoon sons that cry all the time for restrictions on awful power of the unions, you know why the awful power of the unions came into existence. Because the gosh darn millionaires are such complete crooks. Yeah, everybody's forgotten all this, but those guys were bandits and they are still at heart. And every time there's a dollar lying around, they put that snatch on it. I tell you, every union leader in the country would have it, be not totally crooked. He'd have to grab every cent of the union's money he could find and hop on the first boat to Rio to have that graft and corruption in the union begin to match the big steel put over a period of 100 years. Jiminy, it's still going on, don't you know? Only not as gaudy by all the millionaires of America. It's incorporated. From the word go, there were a bunch of hymn-singing hypocrites out to put their knife in their neighbor before the neighbor put them out. And the millionaire-type neighborhoods, these robbers they lived in, they're absolutely right. They stole from each other, they stole from the government, they stole from the public, and they stole from their own workers. Especially they stole from their own workers. They hired them Pinkingtons to shoot up the workers, and they ran company towns wherever cent you could earn was owned before you got it. They hired women because women were cheaper than men, and they worked children because children were cheaper still. They'd be doing it if the unions hadn't got a law passed against it. And these cheap, rich ass turds have the nerve to stand up and plead for the right of the individual worker against the awful power of the union. What they're all pleading for is the right of the individual worker to get screwed. They themselves are standing by, ready to do the job. And by Jiminy, one of them, each a big man on the Sunday service department with the "Bless you, my children, and let's gather up the river for an evening song." They couldn't get even a gentle Jesus, meek or mild, and for every million they stole, they put up a church. And for every town of worker they screwed, they put up a chapel. The actual living, blessed Christ said, and I will quote, "It is harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle." End of quote. To you and me, brothers, those are words of one syllable and their meaning is clear. To the pious millionaires who worry about union powers, those words meant something else. Their tame ministers got up every Sunday and told them what Christ really meant. And where that more money you got, the more money. God loves you. Now, brothers, you know the union stands against any kind of discrimination, whether it be on the grounds of race, religion, or place of national origin. Lest I be accused of being anti-Protestant, I hasten to point out that you can follow exactly the same pattern as described to sing a tantum ergo instead of Rock of Ages. You'll all remember Bobby the Badger, the Senate investigator that tried to give us all a hard time. Well, you know the family. They put a big touch football player and they're all calling like big Catholics, like the dope, only with more money. You know where Bobby Big Daddy got all that dough? He was pure and simple dollar juggler in Wall Street. The last of the red-hot speculators. Last of the red-hot speculating spectators of the speculators. Anyway, he said about what was last, too, in the old times, Fancy Dan way, as he would say, because when he had everything in sight, he went straight and joined the feds, setting up securities and exchange commissions to put people in jail for doing what he spent his whole life doing. So Bobby's devoted his life to public service. So's Jack. So's Nelson, for the matter, and everybody thinks that that's great. When I was a kid, I used to see old John D., the mummy, and the newsreels handing out the shiny new dimes. The sons and the grandsons are still doing it, only they got it better organized, and no doubt the money is doing a lot of good for medicine in Latin America and higher education and so forth and so on. The only thing is, nobody ever suggests that you give the money back to the people they stole it from in the first place. My goodness. And they call us Robin Hood. I'd rather they'd call us just plain hoods. Now, if there's one thing these patriotic old conmen are tops at, it's the fuller explanation complete with diagrams and pictures. In recent years, they've been pouring the shiny new dimes into the absolute American scholarship, and believe me, American scholarship knows which side its dime is buttered on. American scholarship is grateful for those shiny dimes, and American scholarship has come forth with big explanations. It's evolution. That's what it is, evolution. Just like the fish egg developing into the dinosaur and the dinosaur developing into Barry Goldwater. American capitalism and all those millionaires have been going through the big evolution, and there's nothing to worry about. Boys, because they stand up right now, straight up and all that, just like human beings. They've lost their tails, they've lost their jaws all gone in, and they've foreheads all up, and they've traded into their shaggy furs for books and brothers, and the latest, and they read the Reader Digest like mad. They're a pretty cultured bunch. Let me give you just the high spots of the evolution of American capital C-isms, or up the swamp. Sorry, I don't have my graphs with me, but from what I read in the Wall Street Journal, there's too much graph in this union now. The first stage is the Horatio Alger period. Our younger hero, Bill, the Bond salesman, is walking along Broadway, just minding his own business, looking for someone to stick with some more wallpaper. Suddenly, there's a grasp from the crowd. Bill looks up, and there, right in front of him, is the Father Duffy. It's in a runway, a hansom cab, and inside the cab, bouncing around like a grapefruit in the landing net, it's golden-haired Gloria, daughter of Jay Gould out of the Hetty Green. Bill rolls up a bundle of bonds, thrusts them into the horse's mouth, and saves the girl. The young folks are married, and Bill goes into the partnership with Gloria's uncle and Captain Kidd. Needless to say, the villain of the piece, Dirty Dick the driver, was a teamster handling the hack, and he got the heave-ho on the spot. In the next phase of the drama of evolution, Bill enters in the guise of the saber-toothed tiger. He eats up everything within reach and thus begins increasing his reach. Presently, there is nothing much left except for the smile on the face of the tiger. At this point, a chorus of scholars arise in the orchestra pit. They speak, quote, "It may look like robbery, but it's the creation of the American industrial plant. It may look like murder, but it's the filling out of the manifest destiny. It may look like the cheapest kind of swindle, the most heartless exploitation of child labor, the most ruthless war against free workers, but appearances are deceptive, and the fact is the tiger owns both the police and the press. So sit down and blubber up. End of quote. Blackout. The ages grind along. Mountains arise, the waters recede, the climate changes. When the lights come on again, the tiger is sitting in his office having a manicure. With his free paw, he picks his teeth with the leftover thigh bone of an early union organizer. He speaks, quote, "Now that we've built the industrial plant of America, we can afford to be generous and kind. I'm going to raise pay all around, give the men job security, and put doors on the toilets. I don't want to be a tiger anymore. I want to be an industrial statesman." End of quote. Enter a committee of eminent medical men smoking filtered cigarettes and dissolving aspirin in glasses of water. From beneath his desk, the tiger produces the tenderized corpse of Joe Hill, the greatest organizer of them all. Quote, "Gents," he says, and to the assembled sawbones, quote, "I know you people in the medical school need some assistance, and I want to contribute this first-rate cadaver," end of quote. The doctors leave with the tiger sitting amusing on a pile of gold he keeps in the corner. He speaks, quote, "What good is all this gold to me? What good is all this power of industry when there isn't freedom in the land? No good. What? That's what? Now that I'm an industrial statesman, let's bust the unions." End of quote. Well, brothers, what can we do? Are we going to listen to all these industrial statesmen and the flower of the higher learning and say, quote, "Crap, any concession you make to labor, to the public, or to the common decency, you made only because someone was sitting on your chest," end of quote. No, brothers, that wouldn't be polite, even with scholars. I think we're going in for a little of that evolution juice ourselves. How does it work? Well, like this. For the sake of discussion, let's say I'm a crook. I'm looting the union treasury and not practicing union decency or democracy. Now, formally, I simply would have denied all charges. And by the way, if any of these statements turn up in a congressional investigation, I'll tell you in advance, I take the 5th, I'll also take the 1st, and I'll take the 14th. I'd take the 18th, but somebody already took it. Now, we simply admit everything. I'm a crook, a labor boss, and the rest of you guys don't have any more democratic right than the small stockholders in General Motors. But we say, well, that ain't bad. It's good. It's evolution, and there's nothing we can do about it. Today a crook, tomorrow a labor statesman. You can't interfere with the inexorable march of evolution. It ain't historical. It ain't statesmanlike. It ain't healthy. Come the evolution, we'll all be Dubinskis by dawn. In the meantime, brothers, let us now vote unanimously to accept the treasurer's report. Any brother who wants to read it can see me later in my office at the end of the pier.